Please note that this video is for educational purposes only. I don't speak for all Israelites. I am not a member of any camps. I give archaeological evidence. My main source are scriptures from the Bible. The Decalogue Stone, okay? The Los Lunas Decalogue Stone is a large boulder on the side of Hidden Mountain near Los Lunas, New Mexico, about 35 miles south of Albuquerque, that bears a very regular inscription carved into a flat panel. The stone is also known as the Los Lunas Mystery Stone or Commandment Rock, okay? The stone is believed to be over 2,000 years old, predating European colonization. The stone is in Paleo Hebrew, which is an ancient Hebrew language. It proves that natives knew about the Bible before the colonization of Europeans. The stone is a written version of the Hebrew Ten Commandments. So, as we read that, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. You heard it right. Okay. That, yes, the Bible was over here way before European colonization. They give colonists too much credit on the discovery of things. They gave Christopher Columbus the credit of the discovery of America. But we already know that Christopher Columbus did not discover America. We know that the Europeans did not know about this Bible. Okay? They did not bring the Bible over here. In fact, the Bible was here before the Europeans got here. They stole the Bible. Okay?
Welcome to World Events in the Bible. I'm Brandon T. Ward. We're outside Los Lunas, New Mexico at Hidden Mountain, and we're looking at the mystery stone here, the Decalogue, which is the Ten Commandments. Some of the locals call this Ten Commandment Rock. And the whole idea behind this stone here is, first, it's in Paleo Hebrew, and it's basically like a version of the Ten Commandments. It's estimated to be between 2,000 to 3,000 years. Some people say that that's not true. Obviously, if this was true and written by Hebrews that came to North America in ancient history, it would rewrite our history, so it's obviously not commonly accepted. But there is a lot of it's very interesting, it's very interesting. Paleo Hebrew writing, the last it was really used was in 600 BC, so we're talking about 2,500 years ago roughly, in that time frame to be general. And that's what this is. It is 80 tons, this stone here is 80 tons, and you can tell it's actually tipped over. Obviously the writing is at a 45-degree angle we got here, and I'll show you some other pictures in here and maybe some video clips where you can actually see a bigger version of the entire boulder structure, and you can see over time it did tip over. So when did that happen is kind of the question. The area is a little bit of a volcanic type of area. There's a lot of like burning on the rocks on top. Let's see here. I just had some notes I just kind of want to go over, just kind of a brief video for you. This has been known since the 1850s by the Indians, apparently, according to the locals. In 1880, a gentleman was brought here by an Indian guide he had, and that's when he was shown it and started to see it. And you got to remember, back in those days, Paleo Hebrew, barely anybody even knew it. There was no really scholars of it. If you've read any historical records of how we got the Bible and everything like that, you'll kind of understand that in the 1800s, they were having a really hard time trying to decipher some of the records of ancient writings like these. In the 1950s, it was the Boy Scouts came up here and actually kind of bleached or blanched the stone and wire brushed it, and that's why it's so clean today. If you can make out in the video up on top here, it's a little black, kind of what I was getting at earlier. There's a lot of patina on the rock. You got some moss going on here, so that's all been stripped from the face of the rock. And if you can see down just the edge over here, you got some of the patina back again. So it's all been stripped off. So the point is there's no way to date it, to actually get a real date. It's just kind of estimates that people have. There's spelling mistakes in here. And why that I find is so interesting is one scholar, when he was asked about it, said, hey, would this prove that it's a hoax? No, this stone is fake. Or would it prove that this writing is real? And he said, actually, it would prove that the writing was kind of real, because a forger, they go out of their way to make it look so legitimate, like make the writing, the text look so good, the spelling to be correct, and that's not what we have here. So that kind of rules out a forger, at least on one degree. The stone writing, like I said, is about 2,000 to 3,000 years old, according to some people. And I found that really interesting because the time of Solomon was roughly 900 BC, so 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. And we know that he was so rich and everything in his kingdom. And I want to read you a verse. I'm just going to grab my Bible here. It is 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 22. And it reads, "For the king, being Solomon, had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Once in 3 years came the navy to Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes, and peacocks." Now, obviously, apes didn't come from North America, but what would take 3 years on some voyage to bring all these great riches? And I want to go one more verse. "So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth for riches and for wisdom." And he was blessed by God. We know that. That's why he was so rich. But where did those riches come from? Did they come from the Mideast? Did they come from there? Or did they come from the United States, where we know this country has been immensely blessed by God? The natural resources of this country, is it possible that they came here? Another geologist had pointed out that actually an ancient river existed just over the way, and that would have came off of the Rio Grande. So they would have been able to actually come up through the Gulf of Mexico and come up into this part here and see, travel up by ship basically and get to here much easier than it is today. It's just pretty much desert, and all as you look around, some mountains blended in. But I found it interesting. Is it true? Did ancient Hebrews come here and write the inscription on the stone? I don't know, but it's inspiring, and it's interesting enough that.
All right, like the man said in the video, you guys, they don't want to acknowledge this as part of Native American history, because then they will have to rewrite history and say, hey, natives knew about the Bible. This was a part of Native history, but they don't want to acknowledge it because the so-called Europeans, these so-called white supremacists, they want this to be considered their book. They want it. They want you to think this, when this is really a part of you guys' history. And you guys need to come back to your history. Okay? All right. Next in line, I got the Newark Holy Stones, founded by David Wyrick in 1860. The set consists of the keystone, a bow, and the Decalogue with its sandstone, which were found in a cluster of ancient Indian burial mounds near Newark, Ohio. The site where they found is known as Newark Earthworks. They are collections from an ancient Indian culture that was once called the Hope Well. They now sit for view at the Johnson Humrick House Museum in Coshocton, Ohio. Okay, now these stones were very interesting too, and they were found in Ohio, a whole nother location in the Americas, and they had, ancient Hebrew on them, and they were found in a burial mound. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll this clip for you guys.
The videos. This is the Johnson Humrick House Museum in Coshocton, Ohio. It's about an hour and a half east of Columbus, Ohio. So what you see here, these are called the Newark Holy Stones, and they were found in 1860 at Newark, Ohio, which is only about an hour east of Columbus. They were found in the burial grounds of an ancient mound builder civilization, which the United States calls the Hopewell civilization, who were here from about the 500s BC to about 400 AD. They were found by a man named David Wyrick and about 7 other witnesses. This first stone you're looking at here, this is nicknamed the Decalogue Stone. It was found in November of 1860 in a large burial mound. And the reason why it's called the Decalogue Stone is because it has the entire 10 Commandments inscribed on it in ancient block Hebrew letters. You'll notice there's a person carved here in the middle. It looks like he's wearing a robe and a turban on his head and holding a tablet. The letters above his head say Moshe, which means Moses. As you can see, the inscription of the 10 Commandments is all over the front, sides, and back of the stone. After the stone was discovered, when word got out about it, many people automatically dismissed it as fake because they didn't think it was possible for an ancient Hebrew artifact to be found in a North American burial mound that was a couple thousand years old. And they weren't aware that block Hebrew was a genuine written form of ancient Hebrew. They thought it was made up. Now, if you notice behind the Decalogue stone, you have the case and the lid which the stone was found in. And as I mentioned before, David Wyrick had witnesses with him. They dug up thousands of wagon loads of dirt and stone, and at the very bottom and center of the burial mound, they found a wood coffin. When they opened it up, there was a skeleton inside that soon crumbled to dust, as ancient skeletons often do when they're exposed to air. There was a stone found with the skeleton, and when they picked it up, they could hear rattling inside of it when they shook it. And it turns out the stone was a stone case cemented together with something inside of it. They couldn't get the case open, so they cracked it open with a shovel, and that's when they found the Decalogue stone inside of it. This small bowl here, this was found with the Decalogue stone, and it has Hebrew significance, but I can't remember what it is. I'd have to search through my notes to find out and remember what it is. So sorry about that. But the other artifact here that I want to get to, this here is nicknamed the Keystone because it's shaped like a keystone. It was found a few months earlier in June of 1860 in the Newark area in a sinkhole. It has 4 sides, and on each side is a different inscription. So there's 4 inscriptions total, and they say, "The King of the Earth, the Word of the Lord, the Laws of Jehovah, the Holy of Holies." And sadly, this stone was also dismissed by many as a fake. And because of all the backlash that David Wyrick kept getting about these stones, and people calling him a fraud and his reputation getting ruined, eventually the poor guy committed suicide. But thousands of Judeo-Christian artifacts like these have been found throughout North America, and they've always been dismissed by U.S. academia as fake. But if you learn about the Native American tribes that belong to the Algonquin and the Iroquois families, you'll find that their ancient ancestors came in boats across the Atlantic Ocean and arrived on the eastern shores of what is now the United States and Canada. And Hebrew words, customs, and beliefs have been preserved in their cultures. It was that way when the Europeans first arrived, and it's still that way today.
Okay, like the man said in the video, this was another type of Hebrew artifact that was dismissed from being Native American history because the colonists and these people who are in rulership today in America do not want Native Americans to find out that this Bible was a part of their history way before the Europeans arrived. Okay? Here's another one, okay? This is a big one. This is a big one. The Bat Creek Stone, okay? The Bat Creek Stone inscription, aka the Bat Creek Stone, was collected as part of a Native American burial mound in Loudon, Tennessee in 1889 by the Smithsonian Bureau of Ethnologies, Mound Survey, directed by entomologist Cyrus Thomas. The writing were thought to be Cherokee, but archaeologists and scientists later discovered it was actually Paleo-Hebrew. It now sits at the McClung Museum at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. So this is another Hebrew artifact inscription that's in Paleo-Hebrew that they dismissed from Native American history. Okay, but this one is almost one of the biggest one at all that I could prove to you guys that this is history, that this is Native American history, because they had no way of dismissing these writings. No way. They found no evidence of it being a fake.
Bristol is a young city, even by the standards of American cities. But these mountains are some of the oldest in the world. The Cherokee were here before the Europeans, but who was here before the Cherokee? This is a ceremony to honor a Civil War veteran who was a Bristol native. The man was John Emmert, a Confederate soldier. During the war, Emmert was wounded with an injury to his leg that would distress him for the rest of his life. But his Civil War service is not why this ceremony is taking place. Emmert worked for the Smithsonian Institution as part of the Bureau of American Ethnology's Mound Survey Project. the Smithsonian recognized the importance of the Native Americans' mounds that were found all over the eastern United States. Much like the Egyptian pyramids, they had been used for both ceremony and human burials. And much like the Egyptian pyramids, they contained invaluable artifacts that explained more and more about the ancient cultures that lived in this part of the country as far back as 3,500 years. Emmert was a meticulous record keeper and had a talent for sketching the various archaeological digs which he often supervised. In 1889, he was working on a site which contained 3 mounds, one large mound located on the east side of Bat Creek near Loudon, Tennessee, and 2 other small mounds which were on the west bank of the same creek where Bat Creek intersected the Little Tennessee River. Mound 1, the largest of the 3, was determined to be a structural mound, which at one time supported a building, probably for ceremonial purposes, but the mound contained no skeletal remains and thus contained no artifacts. Mound 2 is constructed around a limestone rock vault. In total, the mound contained 17 skeletons, but the artifacts were scarce and Emmert finally claimed only a small metal button and 2 buckles. But Mound 3 would contain artifacts that would eventually cause a huge controversy. The mound contained 9 skeletons. Unlike Mound 2, these skeletons had been carefully placed. 7 placed side by side with their heads pointed north, and the other 2 placed nearby with one head pointing north and the other pointing south. It was one of these 2 skeletons that was associated with a small treasure trove of artifacts. There were 2 brass bracelets, a drilled fossil, 1 bead, a bone that might have been a crude wind flute, small polished pieces of wood, and an engraved stone. Since the mound was so close to water, all the artifacts were damp. And there was that stone. The stone had been found under the skull of the skeleton, and the characters carved into the stone were considered to be Cherokee, but there was a problem. The Cherokee written language was only 69 years old, having been invented by Sequoyah in 1820 when the stone was found, and the characters did not look like Cherokee writing. And there was an even bigger problem. No one believed that the mounds that were being unearthed were only 70 years old, so why was this stone there, and what were these strange characters? Emmert had a rocky relationship with the Smithsonian and had lost his job with them, but was rehired to work on this project. He believed the mounds to be early Cherokee, so if the writing would have been Cherokee, it would have reinforced his theory. But it wasn't Cherokee. John Emmert came back to Bristol and finally died and was buried near this monument that was being dedicated on that cold November day in 2011. The artifacts from his Bat Creek mound was placed in the Smithsonian's basement in a box and forgotten. In 1964, Henrietta Mertz, a U.S. patent attorney, rediscovered the stone while researching possible pre-Columbian contact with travelers from Europe or even Africa. She looked at the stone, read what notes there were, and realized that if the stone was rotated 180 degrees, the characters once thought to be Cherokee were very similar to early Phoenician. She took the stone to Cyrus Gordon, one of the top scholars of such things, who determined by 1970 that the inscription was early Hebrew, dated around the 1st century A.D. The Smithsonian immediately declared the stone to be a fake. So the work of the Bristol native, John Emmert, was called into question. Did he create and plant this artifact to try to impress his bosses at the Smithsonian, or even to advance his theory that the mound builders were actually Cherokee? And if he did, why would he have carved very early Hebrew on the stone? By the 1980s, carbon-14 dating had become accurate, but a stone couldn't be dated. It had to be an artifact that had once been a living thing in order for the process to work. The stone couldn't be dated, but the small pieces of wood could be dated. The results came back and were determined that the wood had been a living tree sometime between 100 AD and 700 AD, long before the Cherokee lived here and certainly long before John Emmert was digging in the mounds along Back Creek. Of course, the stone could have been planted by Emmert. It wasn't dated, so there's no real way of determining when the stone was carved. Or is there? This is Scott Walter. He is a forensic geologist. He's an expert of determining the weathering and thus the age of carvings in stone.
And the bottom line is that the weathering of the inscription is very old. And the only way that that could happen is because it's documented that it was found in 1889, The only thing that has changed on that stone since it was discovered is that sometime between the picture that was taken in 1891, there's 2 scratches on the stone, they're not there. But in 1970, the stone is published in Argosy magazine. They did an article about Cyrus Gordon's work, and those scratches are there. And it turns out during my examination, those scratches were freshly made. They created a geologic profile that was totally inconsistent with the original inscription. And in fact, it was the key piece of evidence that gave me the confidence to say, there's no reason to question the veracity of this discovery. John Emmert did not do anything that he has been accused of doing, and this is a genuine, legitimate artifact that has been in that mound is at least as old as when those people were placed in the mound, because it was under the skull of that deceased person.
And there were those 2 brass bracelets.
The bracelets that were found with the artifact were also tested for metal content. And interestingly enough, they contained copper, zinc, tin, and lead. Rarely do you see lead, but the lead was put in there to give the metal more malleability. But the ratio of the 2 bracelets, together with samples that were tested of 1st and 2nd century Jewish bronze work in the Mediterranean, were so statistically close, it's unbelievable.
The Back Creek Stone, as it's now called, is not the only artifact that's been found to contain Semitic inscriptions.
I've looked at many things across this country. There is a myriad of artifacts and sites, pre-Columbian artifacts and sites that date back thousands of years from people that were here from other continents, mostly from across the Atlantic, but people came across the Pacific as well.
But how on earth could people from the Middle East have made the trip to East Tennessee around the time of Christ? About the same time that Cyrus Gordon was publishing his findings that the writings were early Hebrew, a Norwegian explorer named Thor Heyerdahl was launching his 2nd expedition to prove that man could sail a boat made from only materials found in the Middle East in ancient times using the Canary Current to travel from North Africa to the New World. Heyerdahl succeeded, and the papyrus boat which he sailed now sits on display at the Kon-Tiki Museum in Oslo, Norway. But just because it could be done doesn't mean that it was done. And even after the Atlantic crossing, it's still an incredibly long voyage to end up on the banks of the Little Tennessee. I'm not an archaeologist, so I'm not qualified to make conclusions, but in researching this story, one thing kept bugging me. Most sources say that Native Americans crossed over from Asia on a land bridge that connected what is now Alaska to Siberia. But the race of people that are now called the Mound Builders seem to have originated from the deep south along the banks of the Mississippi River. Mounds in Louisiana have been dated to be the oldest, and the mounds further from the Mississippi Delta are known to be the latest. So where did these people come from if they migrated not from Siberia but from the Gulf of Mexico? The location of the Back Creek Mounds is now under several feet of water under Tellico Lake. And of course, John Emmert has been dead for over 100 years, so we may never know the truth about the Back Creek Stone. So was this small stone that was discovered by this Bristol native a fake or one of the greatest discoveries ever made on this continent? You decide.
Okay, I'm gonna give you guys one last look at the Back Creek Stone. Okay, it is one of the biggest discoveries in the United States. All right, you guys, and it is pretty interesting about these artifacts and how well they're preserved and things like that. All right. Next, we have the Grave Creek Stone, founded by an archaeological group led by Jesse and Alberode Tomlinson. In 1838, there was an archaeological excavation in Moundsville, West Virginia, which led to the discovery of 2 vaults which contained human skeletons with jewelry and other artifacts, along with a table plate-sized stone with unknown writings on it. Henry Rose Schoolcraft was the first to study the writings, and he later discovered that the stone contained ancient Hebrew writings. It now sits in the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. One more last look on that. Now, here's another interesting thing, and it's not talked about. You can find it on at least one website. It's a tourist website that's in Farmington, Connecticut. But Adam, Isaac, Moses, and Abraham's name is carved in Hebrew on this mountain that's in Farmington, Connecticut. Okay, ancient writings in Hebrew found on top of Pinnacle Mountain, which is 10 miles southwest of Hartford in Farmington, Connecticut. Each of these writings are Hebrew names: Adam, Isaac, Moses, and Abraham, or Abram. Um, the thing that makes this so interesting that these are another ancient Hebrew writings that are carved inside mountains, and this is a lot of historical evidence of Native Americans being the descendants of the Bible, God's chosen people. So take a good look at that. All right, next I got the lost 10 tribes in Americas. Okay, I'm going to start off with Numbers 15, verse 38. Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. So you see these ancient Native American outfits right here. They have fringes and they have a ribbon of blue on there. And that lines right up with what God, Yahweh, told the Israelites to do. You see these many different outfits. Okay. Now I'm gonna jump right into it. I'm gonna go to 2nd Esdras 13 through 45. This is the King James Version Apocrypha. This is the book in the Bible that they were moved in the 1800s during slavery. But they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then shewed signs for them, and held still the flood till they passed over. For through that country was a great way to go, namely a year and half in the same region is called Arsareth. So back in the day, the biblical name of America was Arsareth. Okay, and this is where the lost 10 tribes went out of Israel into the land of our captivity right here, America. Okay, another interesting thing that the Bible prophesies is Native Americans being overcame by troops, the army troops. Okay, Genesis 49 and 19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at last. So, if we all know, everybody who's in America knows the Native American history, that they were overcame by a troop. Okay, their land was taken by the U.S. Army and the president, and a lot of bloodshed was over here from the U.S. Army troops. And this is interesting prophecy. Okay, you guys?
We give all glory, honor, and praises to the Most High, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. This is Soldier Yakasha from Northern Kingdom Prophets. And we come out here to wake up the lost sheep of the 12 tribes of Israel, who consist of the blacks, Latinos, and Native American Indians. Today, I wanted to do a lesson on the origin of the Native American Indian. When I say Native American Indian, that also includes Central America and South America and North America, which were the Aztecs, Mayans, Incas, Taino Indians, and Native American Indians, okay? So when I say Native American Indian, that includes all the Americas of the Western Hemisphere, all right? For example, we start out with the Aztec. What is the origins of the Aztec Indian, okay? If you were to Google origins of Aztec Indians, it would come up with some bullshit myth about some caves or something like that. But we didn't grow from the ground like calabacitas, and we didn't grow from the ground like corn. We had to have come from somewhere. Even though we've been in this land for many, many, many centuries, even millennia, we still had to originate from somewhere, okay? So, like I said, if you were to pull up the origins or try to search origins of the Aztec Indian on Google, it would give you some myths, okay, and some made-up stories about creation, okay. But that's not our history, all right. We have our history, and our history is right here in the Holy Bible, all right. And I'm going to give it to you now. So, around 780 AD, we were in captivity, in slavery, in the Assyrian nation, okay? This is 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, who Salmanaser, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the water, and so they came into another land. But they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into another country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. So we were in captivity just like we are now in America. We came together and we had counsel among ourselves that said we need to leave this place. We need to leave this wicked place and go forth into another land where no man had dwelt. Okay? So we took counsel among ourselves. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verse 42, that they might keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And that's why we fell from grace. We fell from the protection of the Most High Yahweh. So he let these heathen nations take over us into slavery. Okay? Verse 43. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river. For the Most High then shewed signs for them, and held still the floods till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half. Okay? And you can see on this map, this is what we're talking about. Syria is modern day Iraq, okay? And we took counsel that we would go to another land, and we took this path here, which took us a year and a half. And this land at that time was called Arsarith, which you know as the Americas today. For the Most High then shoot them and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely a year and a half. And it takes a year and a half to sail from that part of the earth. And there's a man who actually did it in modern day, maybe about 5 years ago or so. He actually did it. He actually sailed from the Euphrates to the bottom of South America. It took him 2 years. But we were better at things. We were better at sailing, so it only took us a year and a half. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verse 45. Through that country there was a great way to go, nearly of a year and a half. And the same region is called Arsarith. So in the Americas back then were known as Arsarith. You don't got to get that close. We're known as Arsarith. And if you were to search on the Jewish encyclopedia Arsarith, the definition will come up that that's what they used to call America back in the day. All right. So that's our history. That was 780 AD. That's when we came to this side, to the Americas, so we could keep the commandments that we did not in our own land. All right.
Indian tribe names and what their ancestors named the lands of the Americas. And we're going to show the Hebraic and Aramaic ties that they have, okay, within these land names. First slide. Sirach 40, verse 19. It says, children in the building of a city continues a man's name. And this is the primary focus of this whole presentation. Children in the building of a city continues a man's name. Why? Because a lot of cities are named after famous men, i.e. Alexandria in Egypt, the city of David, dealing with King David, and you can go on and on and on. There's a city named after Hannibal Barcay. That's where you get Barcelona from in Spain, because the Carthaginians ruled Spain for a moment of time, an epoch of time. And the same thing in America, and that's what we're going to deal with. Ancient America, before the colonizers came, where we can find the Hebraic traces and names that are still evident within the codices and historical documents available to us. So the Indians preserved their Hebraic names through the titling of their cities. Next slide. This is from Christopher Columbus and the Participation of the Jews, page 98. It says, a more interesting mode of migration is the question whether any analogies in language and traditions and religious conceptions or in religious ceremonies justify the acceptance of this ethnological theory. Rodin's chief argument in support of his view is the language of the Indians in Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, and the adjoining islands. He contends that it has many resemblances to Hebrew. In fact, he even calls it corrupted Hebrew. He asserts that such names as Cuba and Haiti are Hebrew, which Cuba means large tent in Hebrew, and Haiti, it goes back to the Hittites, all right, are Hebrew. And they were first applied by the earliest caciques, the chiefs or leaders, which comes from the Hebrew kaizen, that's where you get the word cacique from, who discovered, and kaizen means chief in Hebrew. It says, who discovered and peopled the islands. The names of rivers and of persons in use among the natives are derived from the Hebrew. For example, Aina, from the Hebrew word Ain, meaning stream. Jonas, from Jonah. Yaki, from Jacob. Uris, from Urias. Sabio, from Seba. Maisa, from Moshi. The names of their tools are their little canoes, kansas, or the name of Akshi for pepper, the name of the storehouses for maize, grain, and the like, all point to the Hebrew language. So we can clearly see that there is a connection between the Indian dialect and the Hebraic dialect, right? And we're going to exemplify that even further in the presentation. Next slide. Mexica. Mexica is Aramaic for anointed. The ancient Mexicans bore that name. Mexica, Mexica, right? The Mexicans. So you can see the dark-skinned Mexicans to the right playing Patoli, an ancient game. But we can see that this name, which is Aramaic for the Mashiach, or anointed, that's the name that they bore to represent their people. That's where you get the word Mexico from. It's an bastardization of Mexica. Next slide. Oaxaca, or Oaxaca. The O in the Spanish codices is pronounced wa. The X in the Spanish codices is pronounced sh, because they couldn't pronounce every word that the Nahuatl people or the Mexica people were speaking, because, first of all, in Spanish, you don't have the sh. You don't have the sh sound. So they had to make a workaround in the codices so the Spanish reader could pronounce these names. So O in the Spanish codices is pronounced wa. The X in the Spanish codices is pronounced sh. The correct pronunciation of Oaxaca is Oaxaca, denoting wages are higher. And there's the Hebrew phonetics right there, Oaxaca. That's how you say it in Hebrew. And that shows the validity of our claim that the ancient Mexicans or Mexicans are of the tribe of Issachar. Next slide. Shammai or Shammai. Now, Jamaica, real quick, a disclaimer. Jamaica is not supposed to be pronounced Jamaica. That's a mispronunciation of the original land name, Jamaica. That's how you're supposed to say it, or Jamaica or Jamaica. Modern day Jamaica. Shammai comes from the Strong's H80 and 85. It means to hear. And Ka comes from Strong's H8660, Kawa, meaning dwelling or accord. Assyrian Koa, dwelling or land. And when we see that word Koa, like barbacoa, within the Indian dialect, which is clearly Assyrian, which has ties to the Hebrew Kawa. So Shemai Ka means, transliterated correctly, as land of Simeon. And the Ka in the Arawak language means land. Now, if you Google this, you're going to get a myth that's been pushed out there and pushed on our people that the word Shemaika means land of wood or water, a land of trees and water. We're going to break that down, and that's a fallacy that cannot be proven. Shemaika cannot mean land of wood and water. We do not find those words within its composition. The Arawak words for trees and water are as follows: Ara, denoting wood or tree; Uini, meaning water. Thus, Ara plus Uini could not be equal to Shemaika. Myth busted. We can clearly show you with philology, okay, that composition cannot equal Shemaika. All of this was created to cover up the true meaning of these lands, the true Hebraic connection that our people have, the indigenous and Negroid people that are in the Americas have with the Hebrew people of antiquity. And that's just the plot that they plot against us. It's right here in Psalms, the book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 4. They have said, "Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. They plot to keep us from remembering who we are. So that's why you can see, go on Google, Wikipedia, oh, that means lands of trees and water. Yeah, right. It means the land of Simeon. That's what it means. Shammai means heard. What does Simeon come from? To be heard. Next slide. Boricua. The island name Boricua has a clear connection with the Hebrew. Barika, meaning well. Barikim, meaning blessed. Barikaya, Strong's H1296, means blessed of Yah. So you can see the clear, concise connection with the Hebraic dialect and the Indian dialect, or the Arawak dialect. 1 Chronicles 15:17, where you can find that brother Berechiah. And what did we bring up earlier, prior? The first slide was about the children in the building of a city continues a man's name. And we can see that through Berechiah, or Berechiah, his seed, his children, his city. The city is named after these ancient forefathers. And that's where you get Boricua comes from, the root word Barik, which means blessed in Hebrew, right? So it doesn't mean noble lords, none of that. That's poor scholarship, whoever pushes that, because they probably just got that from the website or whatever. No real research went into it. No real philology or meta-thesis went into, coming up with that ideology. Next slide. Genesis 49:26, it says, "The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors, and unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They should be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren." So the Lord basically was prophesying about Joseph, that he'll have blessings unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hill. The utmost bound of everlasting hills is the Americas. That's the utmost part of the earth, the Western Hemisphere. Proving what? That the 10 tribes came to America. I have plenty of videos exemplifying that fact on my channel. Check them out. Israelites Discovered America was the latest one. Check it out. But this scripture clearly shows the connection of the blessings of Joseph, i.e. Berakim, a Berik, which means blessed. And that's where you get the word Berika from. So when someone says they're Boricuan, they're talking about they're connected to those indigenous people that were originally there, which were Hebrew. That's why they called the island Berikim, because it was a blessed island. All right, the weather, the animals, the sea, everything about it is blessed. The people having those multitude of children, being able to populate the way they do, that's a blessing. So Berikia means a blessed land, okay, or blessed people. Next slide. Tola. Let's deal with the Toltec Indians, right? The Toltec Indians, they have a very strong Hebraic tie. Tola, a son of Issachar, fathered the Tolites, or Toltec people, who obviously came to Mesoamerica in BC times and settled. Genesis 46 and 13 and Judges 10, 1 and 2 are the two reference scriptures. To the right, I have a source to exemplify this. It says, built on the ruins of the once great capital of the Toltec Indian Empire. Tola was a humble abode village set around the usual Central American plaza. And that's from Tycoon's War by Stephen Dando Collins, chapter 4. Right? So we can clearly see that, again, Sirach 40 and 19 talks about children in the building of the city continues a man's name. They came and built the city after their forefather, their ancient forefather, Tola. It's clear, concise. We can see that. Next slide. Rabban. Rabban, and here's a quote I have on here. It says, among them was that which in olden times was the country of the Kakchiquel, the present Chuvila, and the country of the people of Rabbanal, Pamaka. Source Katumnab, Mesoamerican Anthropology, page 16. And Rabbanal, the Rabbanal people are from the tribe of Reuben. Let's break it down. Strong's H7205 is Rabban, which means behold a son. Ra and Bun. Ra means to see, Bun means son. Strong's H410, Al, or what we say in English, Eli, or El. Power or God. So the word Rabbanah means behold a son of power, or behold a son of God. That's exactly what it translates into from the Hebrew. Genesis 49 and 3. That matches the prophecy, by the way. It says, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, in the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power, or what? Al, because that's what the word al denotes. That's why in the Islamic faith, they call him Allah, talking about power. But in English, over here, we had the Basnite version of Elohim, El, but it's actually Al in the proper pronunciation. So you can clearly see the tribe of Reuben in America, and you clearly see that their children and their city continued his name here in America. And this is actually in Mesoamerica, by the way. Next and final slide, Gad. Gad. First, I'm going to read the source, Wisdom and Sits in Places, to the right on the screen. It says, these fields look after us by helping our corn to grow. Our children eat it and become strong. We eat it and continue to live. Our corn draws life from this earth, and we draw life from our corn. This earth is part of us. We are of this place. Juniper tree stands alone. That's the English literal transliteration. We should name ourselves for this place. We are God, O-I-N, Gad, O-I-N. And that's for Wisdom Sit in Places by Keith H. Boslow, page 21. These are the Navajo people speaking. They say that we are Gad, or Ain, meaning the people of Gad. We are Gad, or Ain, the people of Gad. Juniper tree represents good fortune in the Navajo lexicon. Gad in Hebrew means good fortune. Strong's H1408, Gad, fortune. They used to burn the twigs of the juniper tree for fortune. They used to give it to their pregnant lady to have a good pregnancy, to have a good delivery, and a healthy baby. So we can clearly see the Hebraic ties to the tribe of Gad here in North America.
Okay, last but not least, Native American and Hebrew language similarities. There are archaeologists and historians and linguists specialists who interpreted multiple languages, including Hebrew and Native American languages, and found that they were similar. They found that most Native American languages are a combination of Alaskan, Hebrew, Egyptian, and some Aramaic. It also proves a historical link to the record of the Israelites being in the Assyrian and Egyptian captivities.
There is linguistic evidence that ties Mesoamerica to the Near East as well. The Nineties. Brian Stubbs, who is a Latter-day Saint and is an expert in the Utah Aztecan languages, has been comparing them not just with Hebrew, but with languages cognate to Hebrew, such as Arabic. And he has concluded that there are a lot of remnants of the Hebrew language that one can find in the Utah Azteco language.
As a linguist, I have found considerable evidence of Hebrew and Egyptian in at least one language family, Utah Aztecan. I have not yet published my findings for the linguistic community. The Uto-Aztecan language family is a language, about 30 related languages that are descended from what linguists call Proto-Uto-Aztecan. Their geographic location ranges from Idaho in the north to Mexico City in the south, basically. There are a few dialects in other places. About half of them are in the southwest United States, the other half are in Mexico. Actually, what I find in Uto-Aztecan is two different dialects of Northwest Semitic and quite a bit of Egyptian that has the same sound correspondences as one of those dialects of Northwest Semitic. Northwest Semitic is the branch of Semitic that Hebrew comes out of, Hebrew and Phoenician and so forth. Now that's extremely interesting because that's exactly what the Nephite merger would be, is this merger of two different dialects of Northwest Semitic, one of them having a significant amount of Egyptian in them. And so it's extremely consistent, in fact so consistent that the probability of that happening by chance would be very low. Another thing we need to keep in mind about the Mulekites is that we don't know how they got here, except they obviously crossed the ocean somehow, but the Phoenicians were the prominent seafaring people of that time near Palestine. And in fact, the fact that the people of Mulek named their main waterway the river Sidon, well, Sidon is a major port city of the Phoenicians.
We do have archaeological evidence that Mesoamerican peoples actually did move north and settled in the American Southwest, mostly in the area of Arizona, New Mexico. Chaco Canyon, for example, in New Mexico, there's evidence of two different cultures living there side by side. And one of these is very close to what we find in Mesoamerica. They build the same kind of structures, they use the same kind of pottery. And
first of all, it might be good to know that Uto-Aztecan is not really all that far from the Mayan area. In fact, some dialects, Aztecan dialects, are actually south of Mayan areas. Some Pipil is located in various places around the Mayan area. In fact, most Uto-Aztecan languages are located in what most LDS archaeologists would consider to be the Nephite land northward. In other words, in Mexico and then perhaps further north of that in the United States. DNA and language don't always match. In fact, it might be that they match less than half the time. For example, everybody in Europe has Roman DNA, also has Celtic DNA, also has Germanic DNA. Even though those were three separate people, they've mixed enough being in the same area that geneticists cannot isolate Celtic DNA, for example, nor Germanic DNA. There's simply this European DNA that's a mixture of everything. And so peoples in the Americas could well be descended from
God's chosen people. Yes. Native Americans are descended from God's chosen people. They do not want you to know about it. But the next video I'm going to show you guys is a brother that's on Navajo Nation that woke up, that found out that he is a true descendant from the lost tribes of Israel. And he's very happy that he sung in Navajo and also Hebrew. So he's very happy for his waking up.
Hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Brother Yaquah from One Nation, One Power. All praise and glory to the Most High Haya, and his son's name is Shaya. I'm going to do this song in Hebrew, using the Hebrew language. I'm going to do like 3 songs. So hopefully this will open the eyes to my brothers and sisters out there who are indigenous, from the five nation, the First Nation people, from the East Coast to the West Coast to the North and South, and all those that are scattered abroad. So I'm praying that this will help wake you up, because once you see that the Hebrew language actually fit the same style of singing that we sing when we're in the powwow dances or doing our regular social dances, right? So I'm gonna also use my language, just so people know that I am 100, that I'm not one of these red apples, because like I said before in my previous video, I was traditional. I didn't care about the Bible. I didn't care about, to me it was a white man's book, just like everybody else who thought that the Bible was a white man's book, but it's not. And let me say this right now. The Bible is not a white man's book. One more time. The Bible is not a white man's book. All right? So, I'm going to go ahead and say this. In the phone, like kill, like thaw, zad, like y'all, zad, I mean, Hebrew, the hood, and the zad, y'all that could, hey. That song is Salak Nawahaya by Hashem Yeshaya, right? Telling the Father to forgive me of my sins in the name of Yeshaya.
Shalom, brothers and sisters. My name is Daryl.
I'm your Iquab.
We put this video together for our brothers and sisters out there, the tribe of Gad. For me, I want to start out in Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6, where it is written, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because they have rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing that thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children." We as a people feel like we have no hope, feel like we're not remembered by our Creator, feel that everything around us is just desperation, living only to survive. And I look around and see all our young people, all our elders. When we go up before Senate and councils, they give us no respect. They break treaties left and right. They write laws that benefit them. They do all these things, and we receive nothing from them. Food stamps, commodities. All these are truths that we know about on these reservations. And these are all curses, which is why we use the book of Deuteronomy and the prophecies that are written in those places. And we do not have that knowledge, which is why this video came out, is to give you the knowledge to know that you are better than just being called an Indian, better than just being called an Apache, a Navajo, a Sioux, and all these other cursed names that we were being given. And by calling myself an Apache, I call myself an enemy, but I don't know who is my enemy. Now I've come to that realization that my enemy are those who have given me the name Apache, who have taken away the inheritance that was given to us. And the reason why this inheritance was taken away from us is because we started doing abominations in front of the Most High, as far as setting up this crown dancers and saying that they are holy to us, setting up kachinas, saying that they are our gods. When we started doing things like this, it provoked the Most High to anger. And we all know that the scripture says that God is a jealous God. So if we have provoked him to jealousy, would he not chastise us? Would he not rebuke us? Would he not tell us that everything we're doing is wrong and that we are sinning against him? Because there have been men who have been raised up to fight for us and who have warned us of things to come, but we have not listened. So I encourage you, brothers and sisters out there, that you open up your ears and open up your heart to this word, is because it's our word before it ever came into the white man's hands. Israel is not a state. It was a group of people who were dark-skinned, who had moralities just as we did before the white. And I know everybody puts hate towards white men that are of a different color. But we have to remember, this hate is just a jealousy that is supposed to come to us so that we turn back to this God of the Bible. And everything I'm speaking about comes out of the Bible. Many of you have heard of Christianity preached. Many of you have gone to the Christian churches. And yet you still refuse to know who you are, because the knowledge of the old ones have been washed away by these who we call our enemies. They have brainwashed us with their boarding schools. They brainwash us with the sports they put on TV, the news that they give us. They brainwash us with all these things. And as the video clip, which is Big Bear, in there he knew his histories. And many of us have forgotten our histories. The old ones are dying off. The young ones act like they have no sense. But it is time for us to wake up as a people. Time for us to call out unto the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Time to proclaim his name in the earth, Ahaya, Ashar, Ahaya, and his son's name, Yeshaya. Would you like to say anything, brother?
Yeah. You know, what we're bringing out is we're bringing out facts. You know, I was raised up traditional, and I know my tongue. I can speak my mother's language. But the amazing thing is, once we started to read this Bible and started to connect the practice in this Bible with our tradition that we call tradition, you know, it helped me understand who I was or who I am, and understand that the Most High didn't set me here on this earth just to be a reprobate, if you know what that means. Yeah, we grew up in a society, you know, and this society teaches us everything against the Most High. You know, we come against this foul system that we grew up not understanding. Because when we tried to understand what we call the white man's way, we didn't want it at first. Yeah, I was prejudiced. I didn't like the white man. I didn't even like the black man. You know, everything to me was, if you were chief, you were my brother. If you were native, you were my brother. But now I come to understand through the scripture that my brother and my sisters are those who keep the truth. And this is the truth. You are my brother and my sister. And we are from the 12 tribes of Israel. We're from the tribe of Gad. Now, if you read about Gad, Gad is the troop. And that's who we are. We're this troop for the Most High. We're these soldiers for the Most High. We're warriors. You know? Because when you read the Bible, and I know a lot of our stories that we have, it talks about fighting giants. And where do you find that? You find it in the Bible. You find David fighting against Goliath, a giant. And to make it clear that every one of these tribes that are out here in North America, we always fought against giants. Why isn't that the Europeans, like the Romans, made the giants their gods, but we fought against them? See, the Most High had already separated us from the other nation. And when we come into this truth and the stuff that's written in the Bible, when we start to connect, it brings revelations. It brings revelations to who we are, to our spirit, because our spirit, we have DNA. We know that our spirit, our DNA has memory. And through those memories, we can connect with our Father. That's why the scripture says our spirit cries out, Abba, Father. You know, it's hard to grow up in this world not knowing who you are. Yeah, you might say you're Indian, or you might say you're from this tribe or from that clan. But see, none of that was actually really what's going on here in North America or South America. When we call each other's, we called ourselves and we identify ourselves as human beings. When you look at our language, the language that we speak, like I speak Toa. You know, and in Toa, we say Dash, which means people. Then when you look at the Navajos, the so-called Navajos, when you ask them, what do you call yourselves? They say Dene. That means the people. Well, where do we get this term Navajo from? Where do we get these terms Pueblo from? You know, we didn't make these names. These are bywords that were given unto us by our enemies that came because the Most High sent them against us, because we strayed from the Most High. We strayed from the God that created us, that set us to be a nation chosen and separated for Him. Now, when you look in our traditions and our ceremonies, there's a lot of things in there that does make sense. But when we start to follow these spirits out in the wilderness, these kachinas, because I used to carve kachinas. I used to be in the dances. I had my own mask. I used to dance and I was proud of it. I looked at the Navajos who were in Christian churches and I says, man, they're lost. They don't even have their God. They don't even know their tradition. But then when I looked at myself, I was in the same shoes. I didn't know my God. I thought practicing these traditions will help me get closer to my God. But instead, I was being drawn further away from my God. But then when I read the Bible, and that was one thing, when I was going to jail, my tradition could not help me. My tradition couldn't help me in jail. So I started to read the Bible, and I started to make these connections about David fighting giants, just like we did. You know, about the meat trees. When you look at all our chiefs, they have the headbands, and that represents a holy man. In the Bible, it represents holy mans also. You know, and even our chiefs wear headbands. So it was given unto Joshua a meat tree, which is like a headband. You know, stuff like that started to make sense. And then when I read like the book of Enoch and I learned about the fallen angels, and then it made sense who the Kachinas were. They were fallen angels. And when you look at the stories, even in these folklore stories where it talks about how we had certain traditions and had certain ceremonies, when you really look at it and dissect it, you will understand that it always starts off that our people were in famine or our people were going through a hard time. And they always start off with saying, we send a male or a female who has not been married, a young maiden or a young man. And when you really look at it, these were offerings. We were offering our own people, you know? Now, think about it. Are you still following that tradition? Which our elders tells us, oh yeah, this is what we've been doing forever. Or we've been doing this for a long time. But then when you go and ask them certain things, they say, oh, don't ask us about that. Or this is how it's been forever. You know, even they lost their interpretation of that. But when you start to look at it and understand that this is not what the Most High has given us. You know, there's a lot of things in the Bible that does make sense to us. And we put this video out to reach our guide brothers and sisters, you so-called Native Americans. You know, hopefully this truth will wake you up, because the Most High is looking at us to bring forth His name and to bring forth His truth, to bring forth the tribe of Gad, His truth. And I want to say the Most High bless.
La Remelation of Corinth of Richard Burton Dean, Lawisque of Regina, Northwest Territories, Relegate. Mr. Ha Musqua,
Mr. Musqua,
Big Bear,
otherwise known as Big
by
Bear,
numbing rebel
who, not giving his allegiance to the majesty of the Queen, her crown and dignity, made war against the Queen.
That we could build something that is ours, of the first people. But the power to do those things had never been given, or I had never taken it when it was there, or there wasn't any to take. Or perhaps it will be 100 years in coming. I have to face. I know nothing of it now, if ever I had known anything.
Mr. Musqua, who are remelade to avial scrab namal, Raquatu dasisimu.
Big Bear, have you anything to say before I tell you how you will be punished?
It has been said here that I wanted to make war, and I will answer you only once. If I had wanted to make war, I would have painted my face. Did anyone here say I ever had paint on my face? I threw my paint away long ago. I see this room crowded with handsome faces. Faces much handsomer than mine, even when I was young. No doubt these handsome faces will know how to take care of the land, no doubt better than I. And perhaps they will also be able to take care of my people, now that I'm gone. I stand here, an old man. I will be sent away somewhere. This chain.
This land belonged to me. It was my life. And when I had it, I never needed your moldy flour, your stinking pork. Sometimes I was stiff with agents who spoke to me as if I knew less than a child. But before most of you were born, I hunted buffalo over this place where you put this building, and the white man ate the meat I gave them. I was free, and the smallest person in my band was as free as I, because the only one had given us our place on earth. That was good enough for us. But you have taken our inheritance, our strength. Our land is torn up, black with fires, empty. You have done this.
You have done this. There's nothing left now. My people are hiding in the woods, terrified. Those are my children. They are starving, driven from the land which was our great inheritance. They are running somewhere in the darkness, afraid to show themselves in the clear light of day. I pray. Forgive them. They are hungry, terrified. Forgive them.
Mr. Musqua. E o a lemel u. Da quan namau da du. Da quan go out da fru. Da fru ampret gulang li. Avonen. Over da quad go out da fru.
He says, Big Bear, you must be corrected. This land never belonged to you. It was and is the Queen's. She has allowed you to use it. And you may live on the choicest part of it you choose because the Queen has graciously given it to you. But the land belongs to the Queen.
I ask this court to print my words and scatter them among white people. That is my defense.
Wow, belong to Draken. Ma.
U rample free. U rample free.
He says 3 years.